Welcome to Truly Terrified, Paranormal versus Physics, where we talk about some really weird stuff, and Joe the Scientist explains how it's not possible, or maybe it is. I'm Lynn, and...
I'm Joe.
Okay, so last episode, we started talking about paranormal experiences in funeral homes, and I shared one that I had experienced that I can't really explain, although you did point out that perhaps it was just a funeral home worker playing a trick on me, and I suppose that's possible, although I don't really know how they could turn off the light and knock on the walls simultaneously, but okay, I'll buy it. So now I'm going to share some stories of other people's experiences, and we'll kind of just go over them, and they're just short. They're just little short things. Okay, one mortician said that they heard the body cough while their back was turned to it. So here's...
Cough, like...
He just said cough. So here's the thing. When the body is... the person has died, and the body is... all the muscles are relaxing.
Yeah.
There can be exhalations, and I suppose there might be a noise that sounds like a cough. I don't
Consider... it could even be a literal cough. Like, a cough is your body engaging a certain behavior that's hard-coded. So if there's enough...
muscle contraction.
There's enough potential for your muscles to contract.
Okay, so the whole thing about muscles contracting, there's kind of an urban legend of people, dead bodies that sit up after death or, do weird things like that. And I did not see any firsthand experience of anyone that worked in a funeral home or the funeral industry saying that they said that they had seen that. All of them said, nah, that doesn't happen. So I don't know if muscles contract after death. Rigor mortis, everything gets stiffer for a period of time and then it relaxes again. But there's that relaxing of muscles, which I think is the reason why you sometimes hear that exhalation after someone has died. There'll be a long exhale of all the air in their body. I don't know. A cough, I don't know. That seems weird. That seems pretty weird.
Or imagine it like you sometimes see like every once in a while you might see a flash in your vision. That's random neurons firing, or you see visual static, or you have a phantom smell, or whatever. Yeah, that happens. I mean, that happens in situations where you wouldn't think twice about it, and it's just one of those things that happens.
What was it that
it could happen in a situation like that, and then you would think twice about it when you don't necessarily need to think twice about it. It's just something that happens. Yeah. Now, if that's what happened, then you would never know, because you can't necessarily know, and your mind is now on, it could be the dead body behind me, whereas it's just a normal thing that in a normal situation you wouldn't think anything of. Like, for instance, if you're in a room and you hear a noise that sounds like a cough, you won't think there's a dead body behind me and it just coughed. But
True.
Or how about this one? You're in a room with lots of people, and they're all talking and moving around and shuffling things around, and you hear a banging noise. Like, you've been hearing banging noises. It's the people banging. And then you hear another banging noise, like a banging noise. There are people moving things around. They are making banging noises. And then you hear a banging noise. You immediately go to that, but maybe you shouldn't. Your mind should go to, oh, look, it's the ghost. Because it actually was the ghost. This time it was the ghost, but you would never know because there already is banging noises.
You're just humoring me.
Like for instance, we hear weird noises in this house all the time.
All the time.
Okay. If there are people doing things and there's noise happening anyway, and then there's an additional noise that you wouldn't think anything of because your brain filters it out as the other noise. And that's actually the ghost, It's not just the extraordinary circumstances where you're alone and that's just really pronounced. Those might be happening all the time. You know what I mean?
True.
Given that ghosts are real and the ghosts are making the sounds.
Yes.
You know what I
and
mean?
that's why I say you're just humoring me. Okay, so there's a mansion in New Orleans that used to be a funeral home. First it was a mansion, then it was a funeral home, and then somebody bought it and they wanted to make it into a tourist thing, because it's a beautiful, huge mansion.
Are they going with it's haunted?
Yes.
Yes.
So one story is there's a woman who is dressed in white and you can often see her on the top floor of the building crying. Another one is there's a well-dressed tall man appears once in a while. The man will only appear if he believes that people are disrespecting the cemeteries that are next door. And it's said that he punishes the offenders by silencing him with his vision, with seeing him.
And it's like those are people who are haunting the place because it used to be
a funeral home.
So
Right.
like the lady is someone who died and then was brought to the funeral home?
Right.
That's what they're saying?
So here's the thing that's silly about this. So it's a funeral home, and there's, there were several other that was equally as bland as these. And there's presumably a lot of people that go through there that are traipsing through hoping to see a ghost, and they have paranormal equipment to detect paranormal activity. And yet these are the stories they have. I mean, this is so paltry.
Unsurprising.
Yeah, it's just absurd.
It makes me think, though, so imagine if somebody died, the family members came, one of the family members had a really hard time with it, and that was a really bad memory. And then later, when they died, somewhere completely different, where does their ghost go? The place they think about all the time. That really bad memory when they were at the funeral home, they didn't die there. And so it's like, okay, that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is so the people who are claiming they see ghosts are making an additional claim about the origin of the ghost.
Yeah.
You see an unexplained phenomena, everything you know is, like, by definition, not applicable. So you can't just say, yes, I understand exactly how that ghost got there. Hell, you can't even be sure about the nature of the ghost. Maybe all ghosts are holograms from another dimension. And it's just a fun game the aliens play on us. You can't know.
No, you cannot. Okay, so a guy on TikTok called Funeral Home Confessions, he's a mortician, and he said he's had some weird experiences, but they're pretty bland. He said he's heard things and seen shadows. He has heard footsteps and people talking as if in a distance when he knew for a fact he was alone in the building was locked. And that was pretty much it. And he's been in the funeral industry for a long time, for decades. So that was kind of interesting. And he also mentioned that he does believe in ghosts. He believes in people surviving after their souls surviving after death. So he's a believer. So already, once you're a believer, your chances of something
You're biasing
happening,
yourself to seeing things like that.
and coming to the conclusion that that's what it is.
Yeah.
Assimilating that.
I should say, regardless whether it's true or not, it might be true, and you're biasing yourself towards that might actually make false positives for you.
Yeah.
Seeing ghosts when that's not actually a real ghost.
Yeah.
And it might make it so you see them when no one else does. Like because of that bias, you see it when you probably wouldn't have noticed it otherwise.
We have some experiences that happen here, and I do believe that something of a person exists after they die, and I don't feel creeped out.
And we do have
a grave in the yard.
A grave, yeah. Anyway.
And so at least one person has actually died in this house.
Yeah,
we can be pretty certain of that. But I don't feel creeped out in this house at all. And when you were on the Appalachian Trail, I was here all by myself, and when I've left town, you've been here by yourself. I mean, even
at night, I'm just like,
I don't feel creeped out.
The scariest thing is me stubbing my toe in the fan.
Yeah.
There's nothing foreboding or anything about this.
And so when I heard the pan drop and then couldn't find a pan that had dropped, or I saw the dog footprint on the baking soda on the couch, it doesn't scare me. It kind of thrills me because I think, ooh, this is a mystery.
Should. As I've said before, if you have the opportunity to prove, even just to yourself, that this rare phenomena is true, you should take every chance to prove it. So that means if there's any chance you'll see a ghost when you go into the cemetery at midnight, you better get your ass to that cemetery and go there. Because that's really important information. Seriously. Like, that is extremely important.
I've been in cemeteries in the nighttime.
Have you seen ghosts?
Nope.
Yeah, okay.
And
So,
I felt creeped out, but mainly because I thought I'm in an isolated place in the dark.
Yeah.
You know, and
that's the one thing. You shouldn't be afraid of ghosts. You should be afraid
Yeah.
of, like, rapists.
yeah, rapists and murderers and robbers and stuff
And,
like that.
grave robbers.
And I'm also afraid of mosquitoes because mosquitoes are frequently in graveyards because they water
I
them.
think
and stuff.
mosquitoes have killed way more people
Probably.
than ghosts have.
Okay, another person, a woman named Megan, grew up with her parents. They owned a funeral home and they lived upstairs from the funeral home, which seems extremely unacceptable to me on a lot of different levels. One level is there's chemicals down there. I would not want to live above a place where there are chemicals. Number two, there are people coming in and out, and those people are sad. And if you're around a lot of sad people, it's got to affect you and affect your life. That would not be a good way to raise your children. And then your children would have to be unnaturally quiet because they couldn't disturb the mourners who were coming traipsing in and out of this downstairs part of your place. So I just think that is unacceptable. However, that's how she grew up. And so she would hide in viewing rooms and, you know, she would just do weird stuff. So she
very
is probably,
comfortable.
the stories that she tells, there's probably another group of people that are telling stories about the little girl who haunts the funeral home.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, she said she lived upstairs and she saw some things like this. When she was about 6 years old, she was sitting on a couch in one of the viewing rooms and got the feeling of being watched. She looked up and saw a woman standing in the corner of the room. It was a young woman in her 20s or something, and she was wearing a black dress. She was very pale, and she had long red hair. She smiled and waved at Megan, and Megan said hello, and the lady said hello back, and then she disappeared. Okay, that's pretty boring.
Benign.
Yeah. And another time, there was a spirit that her family called the Gray Man. They would see him in the chapel. He was an older man, tall, wore a gray suit with a black tie, and most of the time he just stood there. Sometimes he'd wave.
And he was gray?
Well, he had a gray suit, so I think that's why they called him the Gray Man. I don't think his skin was gray. And then there was also an elderly couple that they'd see sometimes standing side by side, and they were dressed in Victorian-style clothes. Okay, that's pretty boring. But those things seem more believable to me than somebody saying they heard a body cough.
Mm-hmm.
Because the body doesn't, I don't believe the body would cough after death. It could make a noise that could be perceived as a cough, but to me that seems more likely than a dead body coughing. You know, the stories where people say the dead body does something, the dead body is subject to certain rules and science, and
that's true.
It's not going to do those things. So if something's going to happen, it's going to be supernatural.
Yeah, that's true. From that perspective, it's like if you know about something and you know how it works, you know what it does, then adding additional behaviors to that thing would be less likely because it would have to interact with all those known behaviors, whereas a completely new phenomena could do anything.
Yeah.
A ghost could be like 40 stories tall. It doesn't.
And if you were a ghost, what would be the point in like going, woo, you know?
Yeah.
Or, you know, I don't know. What would be the point? And so I think those sound more believable than some of them that I read that I didn't even say because they were just so does
goofy. That apply then to like the EVP stuff where, you know, like we did the phone call, and there's a ghost speaking along the line or whatever.
Right.
That's the same sort of thing.
Right.
You have to then explain how it's interacting with the cable itself or
I don't think
the
so.
receiver.
I think you get hung up on that stuff, and I don't think so.
Then what's happening?
I don't know.
This is what I mean. What's it called? Reductivism. If I put a microphone between your eardrum and the receiver, do I hear the voice that you're hearing?
I don't know.
And if I do, then can I put it against the speaker phone? And if it does, then can I put a electrical impulse detector along the cable?
I don't know.
See, but if it fails at the point where you can't hear it, like at the phone, the microphone is not picking up anything, then it has nothing to do with the physical
We got to
system.
do a seance. We just have to do a seance and scare the crap out of you because
we need to do the Ouija board.
Ouija board, yeah. Okay, so here's another one, which I felt like was probably pretty believable. So this person lived in an old morgue that had been turned into apartments.
They're asking for it.
And yeah, most of the tenants had no clue that the place used to be a morgue until they moved in and started having weird things happen. And then they talked to the neighbors, and the neighbors would say, oh yeah, you're not crazy. This is what's really going on. The writer said she never saw anything three-dimensional, like, a vision of something, but she had her ankles grabbed while she was washing her face in the bathroom sink.
Creepy.
Yeah, that is the stuff of nightmares. That's like, all the stories when you're a kid of...
Under your bed,
Yeah.
But I do think, like, for instance, if something gets caught on your pants cuff or whatever, and then it releases by the time you look down, it might feel like, so, again, the fact that I can come up with another explanation means potentially that it's not just, it's guaranteed there's a ghost and grabbed him, with the ankle, whatever. It could be this other thing. Or you could go the other way and say, no, it was actually demons from hell and they were biting her ankle. Like, the other explanations are just as valid if they cannot be distinguished between.
I truly believe that paranormal stuff happens. Truly. And yet, I also try and say, could this be something else?
XYZ,
when I heard the pan fall in the kitchen. Is there a pan that fell? Couldn't find a pan. Asked you. Did you come in here and toss pans around or something? Did you come in here and bang around? Did you, were you opening and shutting the door? Did you bring a giant dog in to put its feet on there? Why was there broken glass on the coffee table? All of those things, you ask those questions. And when you can't come up with an explanation, that's reasonable.
Yeah.
It's not reasonable to think, like some people have said after we told them about the dog print, a dog must have got in your house. No, a dog didn't get in our house.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine a circumstance that a dog would have come into our house, not made a single noise, put its paw prints gently on the sofa, and then left the house and shut the door behind it.
Well, though, keep in mind, there are dogs next door who do come in here.
There's never been a dog that came in our house.
Now, they don't have that big of paw prints.
Have you seen a dog come in our house besides the dogs that live?
If somebody opened the door and Lucy the dog came in, and then she was called out, and then they shut the door. Yeah.
And then they
but she
lied
doesn't
about
have
it?
big enough paws.
No. And then I went over there and said, oh my God, there are paw prints. Look at these pictures. There are paw prints on our sofa. And then they lied about it? No, they would not lie about it.
Again, you can... So what you're doing is like ranking, this is way more likely. And that's completely valid.
But
There may be, though, things that are that you don't even know about that are ultimately way more valid, and you can't, and it's the true thing. Like, for instance, like I said earlier, the aliens from another dimension, they came and opened a portal.
That is not even.
Except, what if that was the answer?
Well,
you wouldn't know anything about it. You'd have no cultural impulse to say, yeah, this is what we say happens in these situations, not like a ghost or whatever. And yet, it's also the thing that really happened. So what do you do in that situation? You have no information about it anyway. You say, I know this is what happened. I know this is the list of most likely things based on my experience. And you can't go any further, right? Like, so for instance, you might say, I know I've seen a ghost before, so I'm ranking that the most likely. But even then, I can't distinguish the situation where it's 90% likely it's a ghost, 10% likely it was the neighbor's dog somehow got in.
It was not the neighbor's dog.
But you leave it at that. You can't say it was definitively a ghost, because you literally do not know. That's the defining quality of the experience. You don't know.
No, that is true. You don't know.
And so if there was aliens from another dimension or time travelers or, you telepathically doing it, then and those are things that you've never had any experience about. Like, for instance, you grew up in a culture where there's no concept of ghosts, but there really are ghosts. You just don't know they exist. And so every time you hear a bump, you say, oh, it's me psychically moving the pots and pans, you know? But no, it was a ghost. They just don't know about ghosts.
Well, I don't know what to say to that, because that is
It's one of those things where the explanation is in itself boring because it really doesn't help. But because the situation cannot be helped.
Let's go back to what I said earlier, or maybe it was in the last episode, about, well, why would a ghost do that?
Why would a ghost do that?
Why would it? Okay.
Why would Glenn leave? Why would the ghost in the house leave
broken glass
on the coffee table? Now, as I've said, the fairly exotic interpretation, the quantum mechanical many worlds interpretation, whatever, that opens up a potential, probably unlikely avenue for that to happen. You have the world looks completely different than it actually appears, and you have a different situation where you broke glass, and then it merges into your experience of reality.
I wish I'd taken a picture of that broken glass.
But that's just one among the myriad of possible explanations. You still can't, if you could go back in time and examine what was happening, then you could get more information. But once it's happened, once the effect has already been removed or whatever, there's no evidence anymore. What do? You can speculate.
Well, that's what it's all about, is speculation, because that's all we can do.
That's where the fun is.
Yeah, that is where the fun is.
Now, however, if, again, you have any opportunity to prove a whole category of explanations really like that, they can occur. Those are things that really can happen. You should take every opportunity, because that adds a lot of information to future experiences. Like, for instance, you have the opportunity to see into one of the portals into another dimension, and that you see the aliens and you see their whiteboard, and they have portals with them fucking with you, okay, that explains a lot. And then later on, your actual idea of what could possibly have happened in this situation is actually more accurate.
Okay, so what if this, just imagine this.
Okay.
Instead of looking through the portal at the aliens, you're looking through the portal of whatever ethereal thing is going on around you. And you're seeing the lady all dressed in white at the top of the stairs. And that's what you're seeing. Because that is every bit as valid as the aliens. Every bit. You absolutely know that you can rule out you're not hallucinating, you're not dreaming, you're not whatever. Can anybody ever rule out that they're not hallucinating?
You actually can't. But without going into talking a whole thing about relativism, contextualism, whatever, it under the standard yes, I'm living in reality, I not have solipsism state of universe, crazy shit. I'm in a physicalist universe. You're laying the ground rules, and you say, okay, that includes I'm not dreaming, I'm not hallucinating. Some situations you might have hallucinations, like dreams where you're partially asleep. Okay, you can distinguish, and it's important then to distinguish between those situations. But generally, you can say, no, that probably wasn't a hallucination when I saw that dragon breathe fire on that car and then slowly waft in the distance. If you had just taken drugs, then you use that and say, oh, it could have been. But generally, it's if you're walking up to the old ancient mansion that's been purported to be haunted, and if lightning is flashing in the distance, and you stop and it's well lit, and you see the person, they come out on the balcony and they float up and they stare at you. and then they float back in, and you've got a good look at them, and okay, that adds a lot of information. That helps you a lot, because unless, again, barring like no one's screwing with you or anything, you have a pretty much positive identification of the experience. You still shouldn't, though, say, you shouldn't import all of the stereotypes of what people think in your culture to the situation. What people think historically, you know, like what your culture says happens in these situations is not necessarily accurate at all.
That's true. That is true.
You might see the thing and it comes out and it's a ghost, but you're looking at it and it's like, I know this is a ghost, but it's just like a blob. It's like a blob of ectoplasm that's pulsating, and then it goes back in. And that's how ghosts are. I mean, you know, it's like, it's not a person walking around, it's just a blob of ectoplasm. Or maybe it's a portal, and it's just like they carry the portal as they're walking around, and it's a portal into the ghost dimension, you know, or whatever. You know what I mean?
Maybe I know what you mean. Okay, so think about this. The brain activity has been detected for up to 72 hours after death, after physical death, correct?
Yeah, as far as I know.
Okay, so here's a body in a funeral home. 72, it's within the 72-hour window. And we know that ESP is real. They've done those experiments, and they know that it's real. We don't really know the power of the mind. Yeah. Maybe that is some death throes of the mind.
Yeah, so if you, in your universe, you have, like, telepathy is possible, telekinesis is possible, you don't live in a physicalist universe, so you have, like, mental influences on your surroundings, then it's not even necessarily, like, an independent entity. Oh, this is the ghost. No, it's them telepathically creating an image. They're not fucking dead, you know? So, again, it's like, even within the realm of, we're talking about esoteric explanations. There are other esoteric explanations that are well accepted in esoteric circles that also could explain it. You know what I mean?
Okay, so, if you went into a funeral home, would you be creeped out?
I would be creeped out by the Baroque architecture of in decorations, if that's how it is.
Also, everyone talks really quiet.
That is just so cliche.
Yeah, it is. That's where cliches come.
I would not be creeped out.
Yeah, I don't think I would be
based on my experience.
I don't think I'd be creeped out other than being in, you know, like you said, the strange decor.
Yeah.
Just the.
I'd say it's more uncanny than terrifying or frightening or creepy.
I personally would love to interact with a ghost.
Yeah, see, exactly. So imagine you're doing you're home alone and you're doing your Ouija board, and then suddenly a fucking ghost appears and they are telling you this crazy cool shit.
Wouldn't that be neat?
It's not just neat, it would be important. It would be, you would get a lot of information about reality. Yeah. Really, really important information. It is absolutely imperative you conjure the ghost.
Does that mean we should do the Ouija board?
See, the really interesting thing, though, is everything we've been talking about is making assumptions. Like, for instance, let's say you're talking about ghosts, and there's like some kind of other place, call it heaven or a spirit realm or an astral plane or whatever, and you're making an assumption that the universe is not crazy. Or it's a physicalist universe, essentially. It has rules. There's fundamental rules, like things that are in a location aren't necessarily in all locations, or don't have a location, quality of a location, and have rules. Like a ghost can't just instantly do anything they want to physical reality, right?
I don't know if they can.
Well, if they can, it probably would have happened. So there's probably evidence.
It probably is happening.
But see, no, I mean, like, okay, you have a psychopath ghost who really wants to destroy the entire universe, and in this universe, they can destroy the entire universe just by thinking about it. So, what do? They destroy the entire universe. You're making an assumption, automatically, implicitly, that you don't live in a universe where a ghost could just instantly destroy the entire universe. So, like, in universes where you have physical part of the universe, so you have, like, corporeal bodies, whatever, and there's real, like, physics, which means you can have you model the universe, you can predict what's happening. And then there is also a component which has different rules, and it is not simulated by physical reality, so you don't need a brain to have a mind, for instance. That's a really exotic, people take it for granted, that's a really exotic situation. And you have all sorts of crazy stuff that can go on in that. Like, for instance, it might be when you see a ghost in the physical part of the real expanded universe, there's nothing there. It's you in the mental part of the expanded universe that is experiencing it, when it is not actually in the physical universe.
And you're just interpreting it?
No, it really is happening in the mental part of the universe. Okay. But the physical part, there's no representation. So it can't actually affect things physically, but it can affect you because you can perceive it. Really weird. And you can go off the deep end where all of these crazy different variant universes all produce the exact same apparent universe. And those exotic ones, there might not be any way to determine that they're the true ones.
Okay, so I know you, when we talked about quantum immortality, you said you don't really ascribe to that model completely.
Oh, the one that allows quantum immortality?
Yeah. But without going into a lot of depth about something that we don't have enough time to talk about, what do you think your reaction would be if you were in a situation where you were at a funeral home and you heard knocking, or you heard a voice, or there was one person who said they heard a little girl saying, "Daddy, Daddy, come and get me," and it was at nighttime.
That's
they were a funeral worker at nighttime. Yeah.
I don't know. You never know what you'll do in a situation like that. But based on my, like, past experiences, I would probably think, wow, that's crazy, and then tell somebody, and then just basically leave it at that. I mean, I do the same thing I'm doing right now.
Do you think that it would change, that alone, an experience like that, without any other evidence to to support it or to be to the contrary, do you think that would be enough? That experience would be enough to make you feel like you were more of a believer in ghosts?
So that means that I experience something that
is inexplicable.
It's like 99% sure it's not a hallucination, sure it's not.
You're not crazy. You're not
so I know there must be an exotic explanation, and then would that encourage me to believe I'm trying to think how to say this, to be more likely to say I know that the universe has an exotic component that is not easily modelable by physics or whatever.
Yeah.
And is better modeled by our cultural model, essentially, of ghosts. My problem with the ghost thing is, as a model, like if I'm going to use that to predict things, it's like this. It's saying the model isn't like giving you new information. It's saying, here are things you could experience. If you've had the experience, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't explain anything. It's just saying you could have experiences you've already had. Well, but if it said, like, they can fly, okay, that's useful, because I could see one, say, okay, this model's probably true, and then I'd be less surprised if I saw one flying.
Is this how you do everything? Is you got to say that you got to have proof of it?
Here's my problem. If somebody claims to have seen something and they're really just bullshitting me, then what do you do? Believe them?
No,
you'll get burned.
I'm not talking about somebody else. I'm talking about you. If you were somewhere and you saw something inexplicable.
Like I saw a little girl who's saying, and she's like running slowly and then slowly disappears.
Yeah.
And goes through the wall or something.
Yeah.
Then I would definitively know what I saw.
Yes.
And I would say, okay, I know that this thing is possible. I have no idea what the fuck it is. But I know it's possible.
Yeah.
And that's not very interesting because it doesn't. But if I know, like, I meet somebody and say, yeah, I have the true model of these types of situations. And it also allows you to say, like, if you know this model is true, then they can also steal your lunch and your socks. And then later on, I have a sock missing. And I say, okay, this, it's likely this.
I am at the place where I have had enough of those experiences that I can say, I don't know what it is.
So,
but I know it's real.
That's the important thing, to say, I don't know what it is. If you're accepting a model like our Western culture depiction ghosts, whatever, then you're importing a lot that doesn't necessarily help you at all.
Well, clearly I'm not adopting the Western cultural idea of what a ghost is, because that is, number one, scary. Number two, it's like haunting you and doing bad things. And I don't, because that has not been my experience. My experience has been very, very different. Your bedroom window opens onto a grave.
Yeah.
Do you ever think about that?
No, I love the view though, and I have no creepy vibes whatsoever.
Okay.
So your model essentially is saying, your model allows you to say, if I see something else that's must have an esoteric explanation, so a new experience that must have an esoteric explanation, I'll be less surprised than if I didn't have this model.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah.
But it's also at a meta level, it's not too surprising because the universe could be very surprising.
I really, really hope that you get an experience someday, because I tell you, it changes everything.
Hey, Glenn's here. He's listening. He's primed tonight.
Okay.
I dare
Glenn,
you,
Glenn, you hear that? And thanks, you guys, for coming along, because this was fun. Our contact information is in the show notes. And as always, if you have a story you want to tell, send it to us. You can also call us, because now we have a phone number and you can leave a 3-minute recording. Please share, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening, and never be so terrified you can't run.